Today, I'm going over 7 habits of highly confident people. I'm a licensed therapist, and what I've learned is this. Confidence isn't what most people think it is. It's not loud. It's not about dominating conversations. It's not about being the most charismatic person in the room. And it definitely isn't about pretending you have it all together. Real confidence is quiet, it's sturdy, it's how you show up when no one is watching, and it's not something you just feel, it's something you build, slowly through repeated choices and behaviors that reinforce your belief in yourself. What I'm about to share are the 7 habits I see again and again in people who are genuinely confident. These aren't tips to fake confidence, these are the patterns that over time create real, lasting self-trust. Number 1. They admit what they don't know. Admitting what you don't know is one of the clearest indicators that someone is genuinely confident, and yet it's incredibly rare. Most people are terrified of the phrase, "I don't know," because they've internalized this idea that if you don't have the answer, you lose credibility. But in reality, when someone admits what they don't know, it often has the opposite effect. It builds trust. Imagine a manager leading a team meeting and someone asks a technical question about a new platform. A confident manager doesn't bluff or guess. They say, "I don't have an answer to that right now, but I'll find out." That single sentence communicates honesty, accountability, and security. Now, contrast that with someone who feels like they always have to appear certain. They might guess, overstate, or even talk in circles to avoid admitting they're unsure. And the result? People may nod in the moment, but they walk away feeling less safe and less trustful. This shows up in relationships too. Let's say your partner asks how you feel about a complicated situation, maybe something they shared that you don't fully understand. A confident response might sound like, "I want to be supported, but I'm honestly not sure how to respond yet. Can I take a moment to think about it?" That pause, that space to not know right away often leads to a more thoughtful, connected conversation. The insecure impulse is to offer a rushed opinion, to pretend you understand everything, but confidence gives people permission to slow down, ask questions, and get clarity. Admitting what you don't know doesn't mean you're unprepared or weak. It means you value truth over appearance. It means you're willing to learn, and it means you've let go of the pressure to be perfect. It also opens the door to real growth because the second you admit what you don't know, your brain becomes more open to learning. If you're pretending you already know everything, there's no room left to grow. But saying "I don't know" is like saying "I'm ready to learn. I'm open." Some people spend years feeling like they have to act like the smartest person in every room. And when you explore where that comes from, it's usually tied to shame. Somewhere along the way, they learned that not knowing was dangerous, that it would lead to judgment or rejection. So part of building confidence isn't just changing your behavior, it's reworking that belief. It's realizing that not knowing isn't a flaw, it's human, and it's often the gateway to stronger connection. Here's a question to sit with. In what situations do you feel afraid to admit you don't know something? What would it look like to just say it and trust that you're still enough? That's where confidence really begins, when you can say, "I don't know," and still feel grounded, still feel secure, still feel whole. And ironically, that's exactly what makes people see you as trustworthy because they can feel that you're not performing, you're present, you're real, and that's what people gravitate toward. Number 2, they ask to be taught, not rescued. One of the patterns I see in confident people is that when they're struggling with something, they don't immediately look for someone to save them. They look for someone to teach them. There's a huge difference between saying, "Can you do this for me?" and "Can you show me how to do this?" That one shift changes the entire dynamic. People who lack confidence often go into panic mode when they don't know how to do something. They feel overwhelmed and their brain jumps straight to, "I need someone to fix this." And sometimes they get help, but what happens next time? They still don't know how to do it. They still feel incapable. Confident people tolerate the initial discomfort of learning. They accept the frustration that comes with not knowing, with trial and error, with asking for clarification, because they know that the end result is not just getting something done, it's becoming someone who knows how to do it. Let's say someone is struggling with taxes or budgeting. A low confidence move is to hand it off completely. "Can you just do it for me?" But a confident person will say, "Can you walk me through how do I do this so I understand it better for next time?" Or take a more everyday example, tech support. Say your printer stops working and you ask your partner or roommate to fix it. If you're in the habit of always handing over the problem, you never build any confidence in your ability to handle small challenges. But if you ask, "Can you show me what you did to fix it?" you begin to internalize problem solving. And when they learn it, even if it's messy at first, even if they make mistakes, they start to feel more capable, and capability builds confidence. It builds this quiet self-trust that says, I can handle things. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be willing to learn. This change from looking for rescue to looking for guidance is subtle but powerful. And it's not just about independence, it's about dignity. Confident people don't see learning as humiliating, they see it as empowering. They don't believe that asking for help makes them weak, they believe it's what helps them grow. So if you find yourself wanting someone to just take over, pause, ask yourself, is there a way I could be taught instead of rescued? Number 3, they reward effort, not talent. Confident people don't define themselves by natural ability, and they don't define others that way either. Instead, they pay attention to how much effort is being put in, how someone sticks with something, how they problem solve, how they show up, even when it's hard. There's a reason this matters. When we reward talent, we're often praising something that's out of someone's control. You're so smart, you're naturally gifted. It feels nice in the moment, but it creates pressure because what happens when something doesn't come easily? If your confidence is built being naturally talented, then every failure feels like proof that you're not good enough. That's why confident people shift their focus. They say things like, I worked hard on this, or I kept trying even when it was frustrating. They reward themselves for what they did, not just what they achieved. This comes straight from Dr. Carol Dweck's research. In one of her landmark studies, students who were praised for effort persisted longer on hard tasks, performed better, and showed more resilience than the students who were praised for being smart. The students who were praised for being smart and talented gave up sooner, avoided challenges, and experienced more anxiety when they didn't succeed. Now, think about how this shows up in everyday life. Imagine two people applying for a job. One believes they've always been the smart one, so when they don't get called back, they spiral. The other sees it differently. Okay, this one didn't work out. What can I learn from it? What can I do differently next time? Same outcome, totally different reaction. Or take someone learning a new skill, say playing the piano. A person whose confidence is tied to being naturally musical might feel embarrassed when they hit a wrong note. But a confident person who values effort thinks mistakes are part of the process, and that mindset keeps them practicing. Over time, they improve, not because they were more talented to begin with, but because they stuck with it. Confident people praise effort in others too. They don't say, "You're so amazing," every time their partner succeeds. They say, "I saw how much time you put into that. I know it wasn't easy." That kind of praise feels deeper and more validating. Rewarding effort is also protective. When you fail and everyone else fails, it doesn't feel like an identity crisis. It just feels like part of the process, the ability to keep perspective, to stay grounded. And that is one of the quietest and strongest forms of confidence. When you reward effort instead of talent, you're telling yourself, I have influence over my outcomes. I'm not stuck. I'm not defined by what I was born with. I can grow. That belief that you can grow is the engine behind confidence. Number 4, they accept uncertainty. Confident people accept that they don't know how things will turn out. And not just in a surface level way, they actually live in that space. They're okay saying, I don't know. Not knowing doesn't throw them off because they're not looking for a guarantee before they move forward. They aren't trying to micromanage the future. Saying I don't know isn't resignation, it's clarity. It stops the brain from spinning in circles, trying to create a false sense of control. When your mind is hooked on needing to know every possible outcome, it gets stuck in overthinking. You go over the same scenario again and again and again, trying to find the answer, but there's no answer. So confident people say it out loud. I don't know how this will go. I hope it works out, but I can't guarantee it. I'm not sure what will happen. And when they say that, it's not avoidance, it's how their brain actually quiets down because the brain isn't being fed this impossible task of predicting every detail. It's being told honestly that there is uncertainty here. It's incredibly regulating the moment people stop trying to fight uncertainty. The moment they admit they don't know, it's like their nervous system gets to exhale. And of course, confident people still make plans, they still care, they still take thoughtful steps forward, but they don't use planning as a way to eliminate all risk. They know that even the best plans can fall apart, and when they do, they trust themselves to respond, not perfectly, but effectively. This habit creates freedom. It gives people the space to live, to try, to risk connection, to pursue opportunities without needing full control over how everything will turn out. That kind of psychological flexibility is the foundation of real confidence. Number 5, they ask for feedback. Confident people don't shy away from feedback. They seek it out, not because they enjoy criticism and not because they want to be praised, but because they want to grow. When someone asks for feedback, what they're really saying is, I know I have blind spots. I want to improve. Help me see what I can't. Most people avoid feedback like the plague, and understandably so, because feedback can sting. It can feel like a direct hit to your sense of self, especially if you already walk around questioning your worth. But confident people aren't built on the illusion of flawlessness. Their self-worth isn't tied to being right all the time, so when feedback comes in, they don't collapse. They listen. Let's take a work setting. Imagine someone just gave a presentation. The average response is, I think it went okay, and then they move on. But a confident person might say, is there anything I could have done differently? Was anything unclear? And they don't ask this just to look humble. They actually want to know because they see feedback as information, not a verdict. In personal relationships, this habit is just as powerful. Confident people ask their partner, is there anything I've done lately that made you feel unsupported? Not because they're groveling, because they care. Because they're secure enough to hear the answer without turning it into a personal crisis. Now, here's the tricky part. Feedback isn't always delivered well. Sometimes it's clumsy, sometimes it's harsh, and confident people don't just blindly accept every comment as truth. They filter it. They ask, who is this coming from? Is this person invested in my growth or just venting? They're not defensive, but they're also not naive. They know how to hold onto the useful parts and let the rest go. This skill, the ability to take what's helpful and leave what's not, makes feedback manageable. You don't have to eat every plant in the garden. You pick the ones that nourish you and leave the weeds alone. That filtering process is rooted in self-trust. You don't panic when someone gives you a critique. You slow down, you evaluate, you say, let me sit with that, and if it resonates, you take action. If it doesn't, you release it without shame. So here's the question. When was the last time you asked for feedback? Not in a way that begged for reassurance, but in a way that welcomed insight. What would it look like to make that a habit? Not a one-off act, bravery, but something you do regularly. Confident people don't want to be told. They invite reflection. They treat feedback as fuel, not fire. Number 6, they lean into unpleasant feelings. Most people are hardwired to avoid discomfort. If something feels awkward, anxiety-provoking, overwhelming, or just plain boring, the instinct is to shut it down, escape, or distract, but confident people take a different approach. They lean in, not recklessly, not in a self-punishing way, but with a kind of gentle persistence. They understand that discomfort isn't necessarily a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's a sign that something important is happening. Let's say someone's about to have a hard conversation, asking for a raise, setting a boundary, confronting a friend. Their stomach tightens, their chest feels heavy, their brain starts whispering, maybe this isn't the right time. A less confident person will pull back. They'll wait for the perfect moment, which never comes. But a confident person notices this discomfort and says, of course this is hard, and I'm doing it anyway. They don't ignore the anxiety, they name it, they feel it, and they still move forward because they've learned that doing hard things while feeling uncomfortable is what actually builds confidence. Someone might start to cry and immediately apologize or talk about something vulnerable, and they say, "Sorry, this is too much." But confident people allow space for that feeling. They don't run from it, they stay present with it. And in doing so, they teach their brain a new lesson. I can feel big feelings and not fall apart. I can experience pain and still stay grounded. It also shows up in day-to-day situations, sitting with boredom while working on a long project, holding frustration when learning a new skill, riding the waves of social anxiety instead of avoiding every event. Confident people don't love these feelings, but they're not afraid of them. They see them as part of the process. And here's what happens when you lean into discomfort consistently. Your threshold expands. What used to feel intolerable starts to feel manageable. Your nervous system learns that you can survive discomfort, that it eventually passes, that it doesn't have to control your behavior. Confidence isn't built in the absence of fear, it's built in the presence of it. Every time you move towards what feels difficult, you send yourself a message: I can handle this. That message is powerful, and when it's repeated enough, it becomes part of your identity. So if there's something you've been avoiding, not because it's dangerous, but because it's uncomfortable, ask yourself, what would it look like to lean in just for a little bit? Number 7, they live by their values. Confident people don't just chase goals, they live in alignment with who they want to be. That might sound like a cliche, but in practice is one of the hardest and most powerful habits there is. Because when you're not chasing someone else's idea of success, when you actually live by your own values, you stop needing constant validation from the outside. Think about how many decisions in life are driven by fear. Fear of disappointing someone, fear of falling behind, fear of being judged. But confident people don't let fear drive the car. They let their values lead. That doesn't mean that they don't experience doubt or insecurity. They do. But when they feel those things, they return to a simple question: what kind of person do I want to be right now? For some, that might mean being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. For others, it might mean being present with their family instead of overworking to prove something. It could mean choosing rest over hustle, or courage over comfort, or compassion over control. Living by your values doesn't always feel rewarding in the short term. It doesn't always make you look good, but it creates integrity. And that internal consistency, that sense that your behavior lines up with your beliefs, is a massive source of confidence. When your actions match your values, you don't have to keep checking if people approve. You already know you're doing what's right for you. And that kind of confidence can't be taken away because it doesn't come from performance or popularity. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing who you are and choosing to act like it. So if you want to build lasting confidence, don't just focus on feeling good. Focus on living well. Figure out what matters to you, write it down, and then ask yourself every day, am I living in line with this? Not perfectly, not all the time, but enough to feel like you're being honest with yourself. Because when you're honest with yourself and your behavior reflects that honesty, you stop needing permission to feel confident. You already are. Confidence isn't about being loud. It's not about dominating a room or never feeling unsure. It's about how you relate to yourself moment to moment, habit by habit. These 7 habits aren't flashy. They're not quick fixes, but they work. They build a kind of confidence that doesn't collapse under pressure. One that doesn't need to prove itself constantly. One that feels steady, even when things around you aren't. So if you want to feel more confident, don't wait for it to show up. Start building it one habit at a time. One moment of courage, one choice to stay grounded, ask for feedback, sit with discomfort, or admit what you don't know. Do that consistently and you'll start to feel it, not all at once, but slowly, quietly. You're going to feel it in the way you carry yourself and the way you come back to yourself again and again and again. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you and see you in the next one.